The world held its breath as tensions between the United States and Iran escalated to a frightening new level. President Donald Trump recently issued a chilling warning that many interpreted as a direct nuclear threat. Speaking to reporters, he stated, "If there's no ceasefire, you're just gonna have to look at one big glow coming out of Iran." This stark declaration, coupled with his demand that Tehran better sign the agreement fast. If they don't sign, they're going to have a lot of pain, sent shockwaves across the globe. The rhetoric immediately raised fears of an uncontrollable military confrontation with catastrophic consequences for the entire Middle East and beyond. Administration officials quickly moved to soften the president's explosive language, suggesting his comments were a broader reference to the overwhelming military power of the United States, not a specific threat of nuclear annihilation. However, the damage was done. For a world already on edge from weeks of conflict, the words hung heavy in the air, a grim reminder of the ultimate stakes. This type of high-stakes brinkmanship has become a hallmark of the administration's foreign policy, but it has done little to de-escalate the situation and has only deepened the chasm of distrust between Washington and Tehran, making a peaceful resolution seem ever more distant. Despite the terrifying rhetoric, a surprising and contradictory message of optimism emerged from the White House. Shortly after his ominous warning, President Trump announced that significant progress was being made in negotiations. He claimed that Iran had agreed not to possess a nuclear weapon, and declared that a deal was very possible following what he described as very good talks. In a tangible sign of this supposed progress, the president even ordered a pause on a major U.S. naval mission that was intended to reopen the vital Strait of Hormuz, which has been the scene of intense military clashes for weeks. This sudden shift left many analysts and allies confused. However, Iran was quick to pour cold water on the president's optimistic pronouncements. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghai publicly dismissed the reports of an imminent breakthrough as exaggerated. His sentiment was echoed across Iranian media, with the semi-official Tasnim news agency reporting that the American proposal contained unacceptable provisions. A prominent lawmaker went even further, describing the U.S. text as more of an American wish list than a reality. This public rejection demonstrated Iran's resolve not to be intimidated by American threats or cajoled by promises, showing the deep divide that remains between the two nations' positions. The strategic Strait of Hormuz has become the central theater for the escalating conflict, with both the United States and Iran imposing competing blockades. This has effectively created a dangerous standoff at one of the world's most critical maritime choke points. Recent weeks have seen this standoff turn violent, with a series of direct military clashes. The United States has conducted bombing raids on targets located on 2 Iranian islands, while both sides have engaged in intense missile and drone exchanges. Naval skirmishes have become a frequent occurrence as warships from both nations patrol the contested waters, creating a volatile environment where any miscalculation could lead to a much larger war. Iran has actively targeted U.S. naval assets that are attempting to escort commercial shipping through the strait. Using a combination of sophisticated drones and anti-ship missiles, Iranian forces have tested American defenses. While U.S. destroyers have successfully intercepted most of these incoming projectiles, at least one U.S. vessel has reportedly sustained minor damage in the exchanges. In a significant escalation, U.S. Central Command announced that its forces had fired upon and disabled an unladen Iranian tanker, claiming it had violated the U.S.-enforced blockade. These direct military actions show that the conflict has moved far beyond mere posturing and into active combat. A parallel war of information is being waged, with both sides making starkly conflicting claims about their military effectiveness. The Trump administration has confidently asserted that it has completely destroyed Iran's military capabilities, claiming to have reduced its missile capacity to less than 20% of its original strength. This narrative is designed to project an image of American dominance and to suggest that the conflict is well under control. President Trump has used these figures to reassure the American public and its allies that his strategy of maximum pressure is succeeding and that Iran's ability to fight back has been decisively crippled by U.S. military action. However, this American narrative is directly contradicted by intelligence assessments and Iranian counterclaims. A leaked CIA assessment presents a far different picture, suggesting that Iran can withstand the American blockade for at least 3 to 4 months and, crucially, still retains about 70% of its missile launch capability. Mocking the American claims, Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, declared that his country's missile inventory and launch capacity were actually at 120%, implying production has outpaced losses. This vast discrepancy highlights the difficulty in verifying facts on the ground and shows how both nations are using propaganda to shape perceptions of the conflict. Behind the scenes of the military confrontations and public threats, delicate diplomatic efforts are underway to pull both sides back from the brink. Pakistan has taken a leading role as a mediator, hosting talks aimed at finding a path to de-escalation. Negotiators are reportedly close to finalizing a one-page memorandum that would formally end the current conflict, which began on February 28, 2026. This initial agreement is seen as a crucial first step. Its primary goals would be to start talks to unblock the Strait of Hormuz, begin the process of lifting punishing U.S. sanctions, and establish new curbs on Iran's nuclear program. While any step toward dialogue is a positive development, the proposed memorandum is a very narrow document that pointedly avoids the most contentious issues. Critically, it does not address several key U.S. demands that have long been at the heart of the dispute. These include placing strict curbs on Iran's ballistic missile program, demanding an end to Iran's financial and military support for proxy militias across the Middle East, and, most importantly, the elimination of Iran's existing stockpile of over 400 kilograms of near-weapons-grade uranium. These unresolved issues represent major hurdles that will need to be overcome in any future, more comprehensive negotiations. The single greatest obstacle to a lasting peace is the profound lack of trust between Washington and Tehran. This deep-seated mistrust was severely exacerbated by the U.S. withdrawal from the original nuclear deal, the JCPOA, in 2018. That decision, followed by years of maximum pressure sanctions and the recent military actions, has convinced Iran's leadership that the United States cannot be trusted to honor its commitments. In response to the American framework, Iran has proposed its own three-phase de-escalation plan, which the U.S. has so far not accepted. This diplomatic stalemate shows that both sides are still far apart on the fundamental terms of any agreement. The difficulty in bridging this trust gap is evident in the conflicting signals coming from both capitals. While President Trump speaks of very good talks, Iranian officials publicly reject his claims and highlight the unacceptable demands within the U.S. proposal. This dynamic suggests that both leaders are playing to their domestic audiences as much as they are negotiating with each other. For Iran, appearing strong and defiant is a political necessity. For President Trump, projecting success and control is equally important. This makes finding a mutually acceptable compromise where both sides can claim a victory an incredibly challenging diplomatic task for the Pakistani mediators. The standoff in the Persian Gulf has had an immediate and significant impact on the global economy, most notably on the price of oil. With a major artery of global energy supply under threat, oil prices have remained stubbornly high, hovering around $100 per barrel. The markets have reacted nervously to every development. For instance, the mere news of a potential deal being discussed caused Brent crude prices to briefly fall by 11% to $98 per barrel, before rebounding as skepticism about the talks set in. These volatile prices translate directly into higher costs for businesses and consumers worldwide, threatening to slow down economic growth if the conflict persists. Beyond the impact on energy markets, the direct financial cost of the military engagement is already staggering. According to recent estimates, the conflict has cost the United States an astonishing $72 billion in just its first 2 months. This figure accounts for the deployment of naval assets, the cost of munitions used in strikes, and the vast logistical network required to sustain military operations so far from home. These mounting costs have sparked a debate within the United States, as some Republican hawks urge broader strikes while others, including military officials, fear being drawn into an open-ended war with no clear objectives and an ever-increasing price tag. The conflict is being watched with intense interest from capitals around the world, particularly in Beijing and Moscow. Global powers are assessing not only the immediate outcome, but also what the crisis reveals about American power and political will. According to some Chinese analysts, the conflict is exposing potential U.S. vulnerabilities in logistics and political endurance. They believe that a protracted and costly stalemate could weaken American deterrence in other parts of the world, including over Taiwan. This geopolitical calculus is a key reason why President Trump is scheduled to visit Beijing later this month, as the conflict with Iran reshapes strategic calculations globally. Ultimately, the world is watching because the stakes are incredibly high for everyone. A full-scale war between the United States and Iran would be a humanitarian and economic catastrophe, destabilizing the entire Middle East and sending shockwaves through the global economy. The risk of miscalculation, the inflammatory rhetoric involving nuclear threats, and the deep-seated animosity between the two sides create a combustible mix. The international community hopes that diplomacy can prevail, but for now, the world remains on edge, anxiously waiting to see if peace will be given a chance or if the drums of war will grow louder.